Hi, I'm Geeky Pastimes, and in this video I'm going to run you down what I think are the 10 best games of 2020. If you really enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. So this video is just going to be based on games that I've played, and games that I've played a lot of. Obviously there's some games I'm sure are absolutely amazing that have been about, like Half-Life Alyx is the big one that I know is probably incredible, but I didn't have a good PC VR setup at the time, so I haven't played it yet. But this is just based on games that I've played and that I've put a lot of time into. Most of these games I've finished, or the games that you can't finish, I've put, a lot of time into them. So I'm pretty confident in my opinions about them. If you've got any sort of disagreements, if there's games that you think maybe I'm wrong about, or you think there's games that I missed off, please just let me know in the comments. I'm always kind of interested to see what other people liked and what other people didn't like. Particularly what people did like, though, because that sometimes gives me an idea of, games that I could be looking out for, games that maybe I missed. Before I get into, like, the proper list, there are lots of kind of notable omissions, which are games that were really good, but maybe I just didn't quite put enough time into or didn't quite get into the list. And those are games like Hades, which is an incredible roguelike, absolutely love the art style. When I heard about it, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it that much, but because everyone kept saying it was so amazing, I played it. That was amazing. Return of the Obra Dinn, I thought that was an incredible game and something like truly different and really, really good. Demon's Souls looks absolutely beautiful, but I've only just done kind of the first boss. I've barely played any more than that. I've died once in it and then I stopped playing because I had other stuff to do. Spider-Man Miles Morales, similarly, I've only played it for a couple of hours. There's quite a few games like that where I've played them a little bit and I think they're really good, but I just didn't play any more of them yet. I'm sure I'll get around to them one day if they ever stop releasing new games. So at number 10, we're going to be going in descending order, is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Now, this is a game that is available on Game Pass, and I've said many times how much I love Game Pass. I think Game Pass is just an incredible thing. I think both the major platforms have done something awesome this year. With the PlayStation Plus collection on PlayStation, really, really good. And Xbox Game Pass has just been consistently amazing. And this is one of those games that I probably wouldn't have paid for separately, I wouldn't have decided to go buy it. I didn't think Ori and the Blind Forest was that good. It was pretty and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't amazing. I don't think I even finished it. But because I had Game Pass, I thought, why not give this one a try? And I think I finished the whole game in like 2 sittings because I was just absolutely absorbed into it. I absolutely loved it. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a slightly strange game. It's kind of got elements of a Metroidvania where you're sort of unlocking new abilities so that you get further around. There's a bit of exploration. There's a few side quests, but at its heart, it's a platformer. And the platform mechanics of it are really, really good. There's something that I really like about platformers with very fluid mechanics. There's when you've got a lot of jumping around with grappling hooks or things like that, when you've got a lot of like climbing on walls and it's all very, very fast. I really enjoy that. So if you get into a rhythm with them, and I think it's really cool. And Ori does that amazingly well. It obviously helps that it's just incredibly beautiful and like so colourful. And it's got so much heart in it as well. Like all of the characters are kind of interesting, but also just really aesthetically pleasing and kind of designed incredibly well. It doesn't tug on your heartstrings too much. There's like little bits of that, just like there was in the first one, where it tries to make you sad, etc. But I think overall it's a bit more of an optimistic, hopeful game, and I think that's a really, really good thing. There's a lot more kind of positivity in this one. Also the sort of world, there's quite a lot of variation in the different elements of it, which is really cool. Another thing that I really liked about it was that it wasn't too hard. And that might sound, you might be thinking like, oh, well, Geeky, like, why don't you want to play games that are difficult? You're rubbish at games. And it's like, yeah, to an extent I am. And it's also quite nice sometimes to just play a game and enjoy it and not have to feel like I'm constantly battling against the idea that, oh, if I mess this up, I'm going to have to go back really far. Like, the Ori checkpoints are really generous. It's actually fairly hard to die, except, on bosses and things like that. And it's just a sort of game where, like, there's a little bit of thinking involved, a few puzzles and things like that, but generally, you'll always be progressing. Every time you play it, you'll always move on a little bit. You'll always do a little bit more. And so, for that reason, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of my top 10 games of 2020. If you haven't tried it, please do play it. Like I said, it's on Game Pass. It's incredible. If you've got Xbox or you've got PC, get Game Pass because it's amazing. And have a go at that. The next game that I want to talk about at number 9 is Ghost of Tsushima. So Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm still never sure whether I'm saying that right, is again another incredibly beautiful game, and you'll see that there's kind of a bit of a pattern with these picks, that I do tend to like games that are really, really nice looking. It's just Ghost of Tsushima is one of those interesting games where it's not really technically amazing. I'm not like looking at the technology and being like, oh my god, that's some amazing reflections or some amazing lighting or anything like that. It's much more the art style and the way that they've kind of brought to life those kind of idealized sort of paintings of feudal Japan in a way that like it's how you imagine that period of Japan to be, rather than probably how it actually was. So there's lots and lots of kind of petals and grass swaying in the wind, lots of wildlife, lots of incredibly like lush forests and meadows. All of the towns, have really interesting architecture. It's just kind of an incredibly satisfying world to explore. Now, the other thing that's really good about Ghost of Tsushima is the combat. The combat makes you feel like this incredible samurai. Like you are on a different level to everyone else. And that's something else I like in games. I like it in single player games, especially open world games, where you feel like the enemy should be scared of you. And I feel like, you get that in things like Jedi Fallen Order. We had it in Prototype, in games like Infamous. I really like that sort of power trip of like, this is what it might feel like if you're sort of by far the best warrior on the island and you can just go around destroying everyone. And then when you do come across like a harder enemy, it's a big deal. When you do some of the duels and there's someone who's actually really good, it's like, oh my god, I thought I was better than everyone, but now I've got a bit of a challenge. I think that makes it better. But Ghost of Tsushima allows you to do things like you can literally rock up to a camp, and if there's, say, 4 or 5 guards there near the beginning, you could stealthily go around and try and take them out one by one, or you could use a bow, or you could just go in and fight them, or you can do this thing where you just challenge them to a fight, and if you beat the first one, you get to like automatically kill the next like 4, I think, by the time you've got all the upgrades. It's just ridiculous. And they even did things like you can sort of swipe on the touchpad to sort of clean the blood off your blade, and there's absolutely no purpose to that whatsoever. It's just because it looks cool. And that's the best thing about Ghost of Tsushima. Now, there are sort of negatives about it. It did overstay its welcome. It's too long. The story has like interesting moments, but it's dragged out. There's a lot of kind of needless meandering in it. Some of the environments, you end up sort of seeing villages and camps that look a lot like other villages and camps, I guess. But overall, my overall experience of it was just one of sort of sheer pleasure. Especially the first 10 hours or so of that game were just so good. And so like what I wanted after I played Sekiro before. And it's like, obviously Sekiro is very challenging, Sekiro is very difficult, but the combat's quite satisfying. And it's like, Ghost of Tsushima has taken some of the ideas from that combat, but turned it into something where you win most of the time. You get to do the things you wanted to do. You don't accidentally roll off a cliff. You don't accidentally swing your blade and like miss into thin air while someone stabs you in the back. Instead, you're spending a lot of time just being this badass samurai running around Tsushima. And I think that's absolutely awesome. Really, really enjoyed it. Now, number 8 is a game that I think some people bounced off of, and I think some people possibly even just ignored it, which I think is a real shame, as I think it's possibly one of the best Star Wars games of all time, and that is Star Wars Squadrons. So Star Wars Squadrons is the game that I was super excited about from the moment it was announced, because it's kind of, they brought about ideas of like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, the idea that this is a more in-depth Star Wars space fighting game. In the Battlefront games we had things flying around super quickly and it was all very arcadey and very, very fast. We've had games like Rogue Squadron, which were amazing games, and they were sort of focused much more on kind of planetary battles and maybe kind of almost like quests within things. This was very much a game about, this is what it's like to be a pilot in the Star Wars universe. And it's something that I absolutely loved. Like when we had Battlefront had that kind of special PlayStation VR mission, I loved it. And a big part of that was because when you sit in the X-Wing for the first time, you suddenly realise how ridiculous the nose on it is. It just looks like such a weird shaped ship when you're inside it. But then you look outside and see the S-foils open and it's just incredible. And with Squadrons, you get that with like nearly every ship you get to fly. I was originally a bit down on this because they left out the B-Wing, which is probably my favourite of the Star Wars ships, but they've added that in since, which is awesome. Now, I played all the way through Star Wars Squadrons on PlayStation VR, because you can play the whole game in VR or not in VR, which there's not that many games where you can do that, where you can play the campaign and multiplayer in whichever mode you want. But this one lets you do it, and I would say it's a sort of game that you definitely need to play in VR. I think in VR it's this incredible Star Wars experience. Out of VR, it's an okay space combat game. which is a bit of a shame because the problem with dogfighting games is always going to be, you see this in Ace Combat as well. It's always going to be that you're essentially going to turn into a position where you and another ship are looping around, trying to get each other in the crosshairs. And there's kind of an element of that gets quite tedious, like that gets quite boring. Star Wars Squadrons has the advantage of like the fleet battles. You have really, really big ships. You have objectives to complete, and they even tried to do this sort of team-based thing where different ships have different kind of like bonuses or different abilities that can help. You've got like a ship that can heal, a support ship, and rearm your missiles and things like that. You've got really fast ships that are very, very hard to shoot down, and then you've got like the bombers that can do lots of damage to capital ships, but maybe aren't as precise when you're attacking other fighters. And I think it worked really well. I think it's a really good game. I think it's kind of interesting that this was a game by EA using the Star Wars license, doesn't have microtransactions, and they sort of came out and said, no, this isn't a live service game or anything like that. We're just making like the best game we can for a Star Wars fighting game. And then it just didn't get that much praise, which just seems bizarre to me. I think what almost certainly happened is most people played this not in VR. I think that's where people missed out on this. If you have PlayStation VR, I would very much try it. You can get it on PC VR as well. I haven't tried it on PC, but I've heard it looks really good on there. I'm tempted to, buy a PC VR headset just to be able to play more of this game and to play Half-Life Alyx, obviously. But yeah, Star Wars Squadrons, absolutely incredible game. Like, really, really loved it. If you want a Star Wars game where you get to fly around in all the ships from the movies, that's you want. I really hope they do a sequel where they look into the other eras. It'd be cool to see a few more ships in it. And maybe some multi-crew ships, like Millennium Falcon and things like that would be really cool. But for what it is, it just does everything so well. So at number 7, we have another game which involves flying, but in a very, very different kind of tone. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, I almost feel guilty about this game because I feel like I didn't pay for it. It was included in Game Pass on PC. It's going to be on Game Pass and Xbox next year, I think, 2021. But it was part of a service I was already paying for, and then I got this incredible game that's obviously been this like labour of love for this team, and I didn't pay a penny extra for it, and it just seems crazy to me. It's part of the reason I love things like Game Pass, I guess. But Microsoft Flight Simulator is a game that does exactly what it's trying to do very, very well. And I feel like I've got a problem with games that try to be overly ambitious, with games that try to do lots of things and then just don't achieve any of them particularly well. Cyberpunk 2077 being a recent example. But some games really, really focus their vision down early on, and then they do everything in that almost perfectly. And that's what Microsoft Flight Simulator's done. Now, I say it's got a small scope. It's worth remembering that the game world is literally the planet Earth. You can fly anywhere. Like, I've flown past my house, I've flown past the pyramids, I've landed at the pyramids. I've flown around in Tokyo, flown around, gone to see some theme parks, flown around Disney World and like Magic Mountain, gone up to the Arctic. There's so much you can do in that game. And it's so incredibly realistic. Like, I'm sure there's probably some pilots and stuff who have looked at it and said, oh yeah, well, I can find this problem and this problem and this problem. But, I've also heard pilots saying, actually, for the things it does it pretty much spot on. And there's loads of customization. Like, if you want to just fly around and let the co-pilot fly while you look out the windows, you can do that if you want. You can just set the route and then tell the co-pilot to get on with it. If you want to be able to fly but kind of use arcadey controls, you can do that, and you can make it so your plane isn't going to stall and it isn't going to, pitch over and tear itself apart. Or you can turn it up to maximum realism, and you can have a full setup and everything, and you can do everything, like a real pilot would do, even talking to radio control and things like that. Now, that to me just seems incredible. It's like such a huge game, but like the heart of it about flying a plane just feels so authentic and so relaxing as well. And there's like loads of interesting missions which I don't expect. I kind of expect it just to be this big sandbox, but there's all of these missions about going from point to point, and you go in different weather conditions and different planes. And I just think it's doing everything very, very well. It's an incredible game. It's an incredible achievement. It's like an incredible piece of technology. And I feel like it's something where I know it's not for everyone, but if you're in the market for a flight simulator, like, I'm assuming you've already played it because it's just that good. And apparently it's getting VR soon, which is going to be insanely exciting. And it's coming to Xbox, and I'm quite excited about it maybe being a bit more of a casual experience on the Xbox Series X. I'm really looking forward to just being able to like fly around for a while when I've got a spare moment. So yeah, Microsoft Flight Simulator, what a game. At number 6, we have a game that's quite different from all of the other games that have been on the list so far, and a game that actually weirdly started my streaming on Geeky Pastimes, and that is Animal Crossing New Horizons. Now, I've played all of the Animal Crossing games before. Well, I think I've played all of the main series games before. Right back in the N64, I used to play that quite a lot, and I've always had a kind of soft spot for collecting things in it. Like, that's been the thing that I find interesting. Like, collecting the bugs, collecting the fish, stuff like that. I never really bother talking to other villagers. I don't care about decorating my house. I don't really care about, like, the clothes or anything like that. There's just something incredibly satisfying about being able to go on every day and find something new. Like, find something different. And I just love it. And I would say Animal Crossing New Horizons this year had a massive advantage that it came out right at the beginning of lockdown. It was like, oh my god, this is going to be terrible. We're in lockdown. We're going to have to be in the house for absolutely ages. Aren't we going to go crazy? And then Animal Crossing came out. It felt like it was the same week or something that we started going to lockdown. It was just insane. And like both me and my wife got really, really into it. And quite a lot of our friends got into it as well. So we could like go to each other's villages and stuff. And it was just so nice and it's so positive and so charming and wholesome. It's just such a lovely game. And like I didn't carry on playing it for that long. I played it for a couple of months, I think, sort of going in every day. And then I just kind of stopped. But I was happy with what I did with it. A lot of my friends and my wife are still playing it now. Like they still keep on going and they're still finding new things. I just think that's awesome. It's such a nice game. It's got a lot of those kind of weird normal Nintendo foibles, like it takes forever for anyone to say anything. And there's lots of things where if you actually look too close, the systems are quite shallow, like they're not that deep. But there's a lot to be said for the kind of charm out of it and the kind of philosophy behind it, that this is a world you can go to where things are happy, there's small challenges you can accomplish, and you can do things that sort of make a difference within the world. And that's nice. Like, it's a nice game to play. The music is absolutely amazing. A lot of the characters are really, really funny. I just really like how it sort of brought so much positivity as we went into lockdown. I think that makes it incredibly valuable. If it came out in a different year, I probably wouldn't have noticed it anywhere near as much. But because it came out this year, Animal Crossing New Horizons, easily one of my favourite games of this year. So for number 5, we've got a game that is, I'm assuming now we're getting into the ones where people will kind of expect these games to be at the top end. This is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, I remember when Final Fantasy VII, the first one, came out, my sister's boyfriend had a PlayStation, and he brought it round while he's staying with us for Christmas or something, and had that game, and he was just playing the beginning of it, and I just used to sit there watching it, and I thought it looked really, really cool. I never really got to play it myself. Like, I ended up getting on PC eventually, but I kind of didn't get that far in it before I lost interest. By then, the graphics weren't that great. It didn't look that great. Some of the systems, I've never been a big fan of JRPG systems, that sort of turn-based fighting. And while I've always read loads about it, and I've heard loads about it, I never really got it. I never really got into it enough. And I kind of felt like I'd missed out. And so I was always really hoping that one day they would remake it, that they'd do a proper remake, like, people have been asking for ages. And then it's finally happened, and it's finally out, and I feel like it met most people's expectations. It is a complete game by itself, and I think, without spoiling anything, for anyone who watches this video and then's like, oh, actually, I'll check it out, it's not quite what you think it is. Like, when they say it's a remake, that word remake doesn't mean quite what you might assume, and I think they did something really interesting with that. This is the first part of the story, and there's going to be more, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see where they go next, because it's not like, oh, now we're just going to get the second disc from the original game. It could do some quite interesting things, and that's really, really cool. It's really hard to talk about without spoiling it. But yeah, it was really cool. And I really liked the combat system. I liked the fact that you could choose the combat systems, but like the real-time one felt great to me. All of the different characters seemed absolutely brilliant, and like the way they fought was really different, which was nice. There's a lot of variety in that. And I just genuinely enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the music, I enjoyed how long it was. I thought it was a really good length. There wasn't too much filler. There's only like 2 areas that dragged out a little bit. But like, I thought it was really good. Generally, I enjoyed everything except for the very end of it. I thought the last fight was kind of terrible. But up till then, I was absolutely loving it. And I also thought it was just an incredibly good looking game. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. Then that's, partly technical and partly the art style. But just such a good looking game. And it made me really excited for the next one. I'm way more excited about the sequel to this than I am about Final Fantasy 16. Like, I don't really care that much about Final Fantasy 16 at this point. I didn't particularly like 15. I didn't particularly like 13 or 12. I didn't play 12 or 10. I quite like the MMOs. I quite like 11 and 14. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake was sort of the game. It's the first Final Fantasy game that I ever finished, and it's the one that sort of made me sort of get Final Fantasy a little bit, I guess. So I'm super excited to see what they do next with that. But just an incredible game, and if you get a chance to play it, please do. Even if you don't have nostalgia for Final Fantasy VII, I think this is a game that stands on its own, and it's well worth playing. So at number 4 on this list is another game that maybe would be a slight surprise for some people, but it is Astro's Playroom on a PlayStation 5. Now this is a game that comes for free with your PlayStation 5. It's already preloaded, which I think is a brilliant idea because obviously as game installs get bigger and bigger, and lots of people bought the digital version of PlayStation 5 where there's no disc drive, it's so nice that anyone who loads it up to PlayStation 5 immediately had a game that they could play. And Astro's Playroom is such a brilliant idea for a game that shows off the abilities of a PlayStation 5 in really interesting ways, and is actually a genuinely fun game to play. This first game I platinumed on a PlayStation 5, and it's kind of every moment of it I thought was an absolute joy. There was no parts of this where I thought, oh, they messed up there, or that was a bit boring, or that went on too long. It was pretty much perfect. It's quite a short game. I think it's like 5 hours or so, but all of that time is used very well. And again, I've sort of, I kind of like games that are a little bit more concise, a little bit more focused. And I think Astro's Playroom does everything it needs to do, and then stops. And it's like, if you want to carry on, there's some cool leaderboards, there's some cool time trial type things, which I really like. The Platinum was fun to get. There was like a lot of like fun little hidden trophies, or a little bit of a puzzle. But it even showed you, it gave you a chance to use things like the PlayStation 5 menu thing where when you're looking for a particular trophy, you can watch a little video on how to get that specific trophy, which is a really cool little feature. I think that was really good. The game looks good, but I think the main thing about it really is the controller, like the things it does with the controller. And I've said a few times that while I love the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5's controller is the main thing out of the two consoles that feels truly next gen. It feels like something new. And they do some really, really cool things with it in that. And I feel like, probably a lot of other developers won't ever do anything interesting with that controller. But I'm glad we had at least one game that used it to its kind of full extent. And it does, the game does look quite good. It's got some awesome catchy music, and they sort of make a few jokes about the music as it goes on. It's got some awesome callbacks to like older PlayStation games. It's very much a celebration of PlayStation, and it does that very, very well. And it's charming. The Astrobot character is awesome. Like Rescue Mission was one of my favorite PlayStation VR games, and they've just sort of kept that going. The Astrobot is incredibly lovable and a lot of fun. And again, the whole game seems so positive. Like everything seems like it's having a lot of fun in it. And I think that's really, really cool. So yeah, Astro's Playroom. If you got a PlayStation 5 and you saw it was installed and you just deleted it to make room for, Warzone or something, maybe reinstall it and have another go, because it's well worth your time. Like I said, you could play the whole game in an evening easily. If you weren't worried about trophies, you could probably finish it in like 2-3 hours. But it's well worth that time because it's just an absolute blast. Just incredible game. And one of the things that put it so high on the list for me is that it's a game that I didn't expect to be good. It's a game that I heard about and had no real interest in until the first time I played it. And then I was like, oh my god, this is actually incredible. So yeah, Astro's Playroom, awesome game. So going into the top 3, this is a game that maybe might surprise a few people. It surprised me that I'm putting up this high this year, but that is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now this, just to put a sort of warning on a disclaimer, I haven't actually finished Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It seems like an absolutely huge game. I've put a bunch of hours into it, like probably 20 to 30 hours into it so far. But I absolutely love everything I've played in it so far. Like, it's just such a good game. It's incredibly beautiful. It's one of the best games to sort of show off what the Xbox Series X can do at the moment. I think it looks incredible on the Xbox Series X, and playing at 60 frames per second is a real joy. And it helps, that it's set in England and you can roam around Norfolk, which is somewhere that I actually know. But I feel like I've been a fan of Assassin's Creed, like for all of the main series games. I've always liked them. And I feel like this is a big improvement from Odyssey and Origins in a way that I don't think any of the other Assassin's Creed games have been before. Maybe since Assassin's Creed 2 from Assassin's Creed 1. But it's been a big jump forward where it really feels like they've taken a step back and listened to people who have played these games and said, oh, okay, we get it. We don't like the fact that, the map is overwhelmed with icons and all those icons tell you exactly what you're going to do. Instead, you've got these cool little lights where it kind of tells you what the reward's going to be, but you're not sure what you're going to have to do to get it. So it's kind of, there's a bit of mystery in there. the character sort of, you get much more attached to it because you're actually building a settlement up. The dialogue choices from Odyssey are in it, and I think they're really good. Like, there's a lot of really funny dialogue. They've finally started solving the gender thing of giving you an option to let the game decide whether you're playing as male or female either, depending on how the narrative goes, which is a really interesting idea, which I haven't really explored enough yet. There's a lot of things in Assassin's Creed Valhalla that just kind of really surprised me at how polished it is. You know, when you've heard of other games, like going back to Cyberpunk again, other games that have tried to take on this big open world thing and then had a lot of rough edges. Assassin's Creed Valhalla came out at the same time as Xbox Series X, so it's sort of a launch title on new consoles, looks incredible, and I've just had like nothing but fun with it. Like, I haven't had any frustrating bugs or anything like that. I haven't had things that felt like they were rushed. I haven't found anything where I thought, oh, they ran out of time here, this should have been better. Everything I've done in it just feels incredible. And I love the whole Viking mythology. I love the whole sort of Viking aesthetic and stuff like that. I love all the little jokes in it. I think their sense of humor in Assassin's Creed Valhalla is really good. And I played it like a week after Watch Dogs Legion came out. And Watch Dogs Legion, another Ubisoft game, another open world, set in England again, so I thought I'd really like it. I completely bounced off. Didn't like it at all. Had a bit of fun the first couple of nights and then was like, oh, this is actually quite shallow. I don't really like it. And Valhalla kind of is completely the opposite of it. You know, Watch Dogs Legion doesn't have a protagonist. You know, instead you choose your own thing. Assassin's Creed has Ivor, which is like an incredible protagonist, like really, really well acted, really funny voice lines, and a character you care about very quickly. I think like it doesn't take very long before you end up like completely invested into his or her story, which I think is absolutely awesome. And then, you know, Watch Dogs Legion, the world feels kind of barren and it feels kind of weirdly, even though it's busy, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot of copy and paste stuff. Valhalla, every time I go to a new county, it's a different feel to it. There's different stories. I get invested in stories of the people in there. I really like reading about it and then sort of even going onto Wikipedia and reading about how much of it is real, like how much real history is in there. I love the fact that I've watched shows like Vikings, which deals with Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons. And then in this, you meet some of his sons. And obviously, they're different versions of those characters, but kind of different interpretations based on the few facts we do have about them. And it's kind of nice to be able to see someone and be like, oh, okay, this is Ivor. Like, I get how they've changed, you know, Ivor the Boneless, they've changed their interpretation of that from the TV show. I think it's really cool. So yeah, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, if you're at all into Norse mythology or that sort of whole aesthetic or the stories or the world, or you've just liked Assassin's Creed games in the past and maybe fallen off of them recently, I think you need to have another go at Assassin's Creed Valhalla because it's definitely worth it. And I would say in terms of like the big open world, expansive RPGs this year, that's been my favorite. Like that game is incredible, and I kind of can't wait to go back and play some more of it. More so, like I'm feeling like I'm finishing Cyberpunk almost out of a sense of duty that I've been waiting for it for so long. I might as well finish it. Whereas Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I just can't wait to dive back into that world. Just absolutely awesome. And if you've got a next gen console, really, really good game just to show off what they can do, what a game can look like when it's running on next gen. So for number two, a game that I'm sure none of you are surprised to see up here, but maybe you might be surprised that it's not a number one, and that is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Now, obviously, this has kind of a special place in my heart. Like, I might have a slight bias towards this game because it's been incredible for me. The whole marketing campaign up to it, from when we found the first trailer through Pawn Takes Pawn, up to like getting loads of little bits of intel about William Bowman and finding out a little bit more about it through all of that stuff. And then the zombies mode coming out and like us getting the world first and getting to play with like Starburst and Noah and Codename Pizza. Just been absolutely incredible. Like, I really, really enjoy it. I can understand some of the criticism against it. You know, there weren't many multiplayer maps at launch. I thought a single player campaign was a little bit short and sort of felt like it's a little bit cut off. But outside of that, I think it's just amazing. I think it's a refinement on a lot of the things that I've loved about Call of Duty. I think they've completely embraced the idea they did in Modern Warfare last year of kind of, okay, you can buy the Battle Pass, but we're not going to sell DLC packs. Everyone's going to get the new maps. We're going to have new maps coming out regularly, new content coming out regularly. I keep thinking, oh, I want to go play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, or, you know, I want to go back to sort of try and get through Cyberpunk or things like that, or I want to start some other game. And then it feels like every week there's something new in Call of Duty. There's something I haven't seen before. Or there's something people are trying, or there's a new release, or there's a new bit of news, or a new little puzzle to solve. I just think they're doing an incredible job of keeping the sort of interest going in that game. And I absolutely love it. I love how there's always something to do. And I love the community that's built up around it as well. You know, the idea there's lots of people who are excited about all of it. I thought the campaign looked really cool, and I loved some of the missions in it, but I do feel like the campaign was a little bit short and a little bit kind of It didn't really have the payoff that I was hoping for. I didn't think it had the big sort of set pieces that I loved in the other ones. Multiplayer, I absolutely love the maps that are in there. I think like are really cool, and the new maps they've added, I think are really good too. I've been having a blast on Gunfight today and Prop Hunt. Really, really enjoyed playing those. But Zombies has just been the biggest thing for me. Like Zombies has been absolutely incredible. I think D Machine is maybe like the perfect zombies map for someone who didn't know that they would like zombies. I think like I've always dabbled in zombies. I've always played little bits when the maps come out. Me and my friends have played it a little bit. We'd never solved Easter eggs before until I was preparing for this. Um, I never really got very far. I never tried doing high rounds. I never sort of got good at playing zombies. And this just sort of really softly introduces you to a lot of the sort of key ideas, the little quest to make the pack-a-punch machine and things like that. And you've got an Easter egg that was a lot of fun to do, but it's like very repeatable, very simple to explain to other people, to take other people through, to show other people. I think the story, most of the story is told through the actual things that you see while you do the Easter egg. The ghosts, like they tell you what's going on. You get a good sense of that. But if you want to delve into the lore, there's loads of intel to collect, and there's lots of different ways to collect intel. So it's not like you're just picking up one thing. There's like some that you get on the map, some that you get from enemy drops, and some that you do from doing different things. I think that's just a very, very cool way of sort of giving people the lore if they're really, really invested in it. And we've already seen some like new modes being added to it. So we've seen like the Christmas mode that's going on at the moment, and I think that's going to carry on going to the point where like I can't see myself getting bored of zombies anytime soon. I've been doing the Dark Ether grind, and I've got through some of the worst weapons doing that now. And I have to say, even though the weapons frustrated me, I never really got bored of playing on that map. Like I just enjoy running around that map, even if I'm just running around spawn in circles. I think there's a lot of things to really love about it. And the little side Easter eggs and stuff like that has been some that have been really, really well hidden. And it's been really fun sort of discovering some of that stuff or seeing other people discover it and sort of like getting excited when I log on in the morning and find out that someone's found something new that I'd never seen before. I just think that's very, very cool. So Black Ops Cold War, for me, is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see what they do with it for the rest of the year. But for launch, this is probably the most I've played a Call of Duty game at launch, like ever. Just absolutely loved it. So now for my top game of 2020, the game that I think was the best game of this year, the game that you should all go out and play straight away. And I know it's a controversial game, and I know it's a game that not everyone loved as much as I did, and I even got into some sort of quite heated things where I felt like if other people didn't love it, there must be something wrong with them, because I just don't understand how anyone could not find this the most spectacular game, and that is The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I was quite vocal, especially to Name Gear, who really liked the first one, that I didn't enjoy the first one that much. I thought, I finished the first one and I thought it was fine, but I didn't really understand the praise it got. I didn't think it was doing anything that revolutionary. I didn't think the the story was that interesting. I just had a lot of problems with it where I thought like it's a fine game, but it wasn't amazing. So going into Last of Us Part 2, I was excited because it's a big event game. Naughty Dog are always putting out something good, but I wasn't, super hyped for it. But then all of that changed as soon as I started playing it. Like, it just does such a brilliant job of world building, making you care about the characters. It's funny, it's sad, it's kind of got this sort of incredible pace where it takes you through different atmospheres and different emotions very, very quickly. The gameplay is very satisfying, like the combat's really, really good, and there's a lot of time where it just lets you explore. Like there's a lot of it does a very good job of like having these incredibly slow moments where you're just looking around or you're just trying to get somewhere or you're just having a chat to someone, and then it ramps up in a very natural way to these incredibly tense moments, these moments where you really feel like you're struggling to survive, and then it gives you a breather, and then it gives you a chance to sort of reflect on what's happened and maybe gives you a story beat or a cutscene or something. And then obviously there's the things that I can't really talk about because they go in spoiler territory. But there's something about the way the game is structured and the narrative of the game that I think is just incredible. I think like genuinely when it happened, I was utterly shocked. I didn't know anything about it. Like thankfully I played it and sort of had a bit of a blackout. I'd even blocked loads of terms on Twitter, so I didn't see any spoilers. And there are things that happen in that game that changed the way I see other game narratives. Like this game actively made other games worse for me. It does such a good job of humanizing every side in a conflict that I don't think I've ever seen a game do so successfully before. And it just, it made me question myself and question my own sort of like judgments on characters and judgments on ideas. and it really made me sort of have to think about the game in a really interesting, not think about it as in a puzzle, thinking about how to solve something, but just thinking about what I thought of what the characters were doing. And that was just like, to me, that was breathtaking. It was sort of like, it was like reading an incredibly good book while also getting to play an incredibly good video game. And it's just sort of, checked all those boxes. If I ever need an example of a game that works as a piece of art now, that's my go-to. Last of Us Part 2 is incredible. I think it helps if you've played the first one, but I don't think you have to have played the first one, to be honest. I think like it's well worth checking out, even if you just want to go straight into it. But if you've got the PlayStation Plus collection, you can get the first one anyway through that. So just do that. If you've got a PlayStation 5, play through the first one, then go into this one, just because then there'll be a little bit more resonance with some of the returning characters, I guess. But yeah, that game's incredible. And like beyond the narrative, which I think is really strong suit, and I think the voice acting's incredible, and I think the writing's really good, and graphically it's incredible. Like considering it's a PlayStation 4 game, it's wasn't a PlayStation 5 game. It looks better than a lot of the PlayStation 5 games, a lot of games that sort of optimize PlayStation 5. And I think a lot of that is due to Naughty Dog really knowing their way around the PlayStation and knowing how to get the best out of it. And it also has some incredible like music in it, some like real incredible moments that are helped with some good use of licensed music. And then there's also some puzzles that, while they're never tricky, they do things that I've not really seen games do very successfully before, where it's like you can think about them in terms of how you would solve it in real life. Like, you can think, okay, in real life, this is what I do. And usually that's how you actually do it. And that's kind of incredible. I think that only happens like 2 or 3 times in the whole game. There's these little puzzles where it's like, they're kind of physics-based puzzles. And it's like, oh, this actually, like, this just makes sense. Things are reacting the way I think. And that's a really refreshing take on it. It also doesn't outstay its welcome at any point. It's really interesting. Early on, there's like an open world section where you kind of can choose which thing you do first, and you get to explore quite a big area. And I kind of thought, okay, this is going to be the first of these, and there's going to be a few of them as the game progresses. And it's like, no, that's it. That's just the only time you ever do that. It's just like, it's a little bit of a change for a couple of hours, and then you go back to like the other type of game. And I think that's really cool for a game to be brave enough to do that, sort of set up these systems, set up these ideas, and then just do it for long enough that you can enjoy it, but then not do it to death. I think that's really, really clever. But yeah, like Last of Us Part 2, if you don't know the story, if you don't know how the story works, try to read as little about it as you possibly can and just go play it, because just an incredible achievement. And it's sort of really like, it's not just a game of 2020. I think that's the game of the last generation. Like, that's my favorite game of the last generation. And I think the most important game of the last generation. It gets so much right. And I just absolutely adore it. I really, really think that that's a special game that any adult who enjoys games should play it, because they've done so much of it that like elevates gaming as a sort of medium. It sort of shows what a story-based game could potentially do, and I hope we see more developers take note of it and sort of think, okay, we need to get writers of that caliber, and we need to take creative risks of that sort of, that height. Because it's worth it in the long run. It's worth it to create something that's like really memorable. So there you go. Those are my top 10 games of 2020. Now, like I said in the comments, I'd really appreciate it if you had kind of ideas about games that I've maybe missed from this, games that I might have not played, but you think I'd really enjoy based on what I've said about those. I know there's a load of other really, really good games that have come out this year. I know there's a load of games that have kind of been in early access this year, but I feel like they're not quite the full release yet. Like Phasmophobia is a good example of that. But those are the games that I've played through to what I feel like I've played enough of them, or I feel like I've played a completion, other than Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I will go back to. And obviously Black Ops Cold War, which I feel like I'm not going to stop playing till the next Call of Duty comes out. But I thought those games were brilliant. And if you ever want any recommendations for like this Christmas, what games should you play? If you're in some kind of lockdown now, like it got announced today, what sort of games should you be playing? All of those are absolutely incredible, and you'd have a blast with any of them. So really do consider them. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe, and also let me know in the comments what you thought of it, because I really want to do some more of these list videos. I really like watching list videos personally, so let me know what you thought of it. If there's things you'd like me to change, if there's things that you'd like to see more of. I'm quite tempted to do some list videos for things like maybe my favourite Call of Duty games, maybe my favourite theme parks, maybe my favourite like theme park rides, like favourite roller coasters, something like that, maybe like films, TV shows. Like, could do anything. So if you've got ideas of things that you'd like to see, or things that you'd like to see more of or less of, please do let me know. This is also my first time using sort of Premiere Pro and editing stuff in a kind of different workflow. So if there's something about the production quality of the video that you notice that you think I could do better, or something you really like that you want me to do more of, let me know that as well. That would help out. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.